It's former Boston Bruin Anson Carter joining us here on 98.5 The Sports up in Boston. Anson, how you enjoying your time in Boston in the Four Nations final?
Oh, it's been great. We're actually in the studio here in Atlanta, but just seeing the crowds there in Boston, I'm having a serious case of FOMO because I watched the crowds in Montreal. Now coming back down to here, the U.S. in Boston, where it's been the site of so many Stanley Cup final runs for the Boston Bruins. They've seen the Patriots win championships, the Red Sox, the Celtics. It's only fitting that the championship game will be there at the TD Garden Arena.
Well, listen, we saw I think some people saw the NBA All-Star game this weekend, so it was so dominated by Canada, USA, and what's going on with the Four Nations final here. But what did you think originally of the Canada-USA matchup? And, I mean, did you think that there'd be 3 fights in the first 9 seconds and it would be that much excitement?
Well, I can tell you right now, if anyone watched the basketball game, I wasn't one of them. I was too caught up in the Four Nations. And you heard, Draymond Green, the fellow Michigan State Spartan, talking about the Four Nations. Like, everyone's been talking about Tom Brady, I believe, tweeted about the Four Nations. J.J. Watt, same exact thing. Did I expect 3 tilts right away? Absolutely not. But you know what? It's great for the game. People are talking about it. It's not the fighting aspect. It's the passion between the two countries. And it's a meeting of the minds, right? It's Canada, U.S., plus what's happening off the ice politically, too. It was so charged. I mean, I loved it. It was great. I had my neighbors here in Atlanta talking about hockey that rarely watch the game at all.
What do you think about Canada going with Binnington and net? Don Sweeney's the GM of the team, of course, here in Boston. Do you think he will be the guy in the championship game as well?
I think he will be. I think the time to have switched probably would have been game number 2. Against the Americans. I think now Binnington's the guy. It'd be kind of hard to put Aiden Hill in now in a championship-type game. So for me, it's up to, can Canada weather the storm and not beat themselves? I thought the Americans were tremendous in that game versus Canada, bottling up the middle of the ice and defending. Charlie McAvoy, oh my goodness, what a horse he is on the back end for Team USA. I think the only thing that's missing from his game is the offensive input or output before people start talking about Charlie McAvoy and the Norris Trophy. Because, when you get Norris consideration, you have to have some offense to your game. He has that, but it's taken a little bit of time to show that. But defensively, oh, my goodness, the job he did on Connor McDavid was outstanding.
Yeah, I wish we could see that more in the regular season. He has been dealing with an injury. He's not going to play in tonight's game as he's preparing for the championship game this weekend. But just sticking with the Bruins, Brad Marchand didn't see as much ice time in that game. What do you think about Marchand this year, him being the captain, and do you think he'll contribute in the championship game?
I really do. Playing in Boston in front of his home fans there, Marshy's game, he's rounded out his game so much since he first came to the league as an agitator. He's developed into a highly skilled player. Playing with Bergie and playing with Sid on those national teams certainly helped. Now he's wearing the C. I listen to him a lot in pregame and postgame and giving his pressers. He gives thoughtful answers. He's got the great temperature of the room. He's had tremendous leadership that he's had a chance to learn from in the past. So his game is so much more than just goals and assists, but he always comes up big in the big moments.
Anson Carter joining us here. We're on the flagship of the Boston Bruins, so I know a lot of people, when we mentioned you were coming on today, they're like, oh, he was part of a big trade years ago. So I wanted to just ask you, what do you think the Bruins need to do here before the trade deadline? Should they add pieces, or should they try to maybe look ahead to the future a bit?
Yeah, it's so weird because all the additions they made in the offseason, which I thought were pretty smart, haven't really panned out. And there's nobody on that team you could point to and you're saying, oh, that guy's having a tremendous season. It just feels like everyone on the team is just flat. Whereas last year, that's the kind of year they're having this year is the kind of year I expected last year. Not having Krejci, not having Bergie being there. I thought there'd been a little bit of drop-off. Yes, the goaltending was outstanding, so that covered up some of the warts. But it's hard to really analyze the squad because no one's really having a great year. Everyone's having a flat year. So having said that, we know there's tons of pressure that comes with playing in Boston. There's high expectations there. Do I think Donnie Sweeney will sit pat and do nothing? I don't think so. I think he'll tweak the team and do something, not just for the short term, but I think he'll have his eyes set on making some changes possibly that'll affect this team long term too.
I'll get your prediction on the championship game in a minute here. I just have one more Bruins question to ask. I don't know who the next coach will be. I know Joe Sacco's in there now, and he's kind of weathered the storm here, but who do you think will be the next head coach of the Boston Bruins?
Oh, it's so hard to tell. I've always said, and I call him the boogeyman, Joel Quenneville. He's out there. He's lurking. Every coach that's out there that's in trouble knows that he's out there. A Stanley Cup winner, tons of success in the league. He's chomping at the bit. He's one of the winningest coaches of the National Hockey League. He has to be in consideration. This is a team that needs something to maybe jolt them. Like you saw what happened in Detroit with Todd McClellan when he came and, turned that team around there. So Quenneville, I think, could be a good addition. I mean, he'd be a great addition to any sort of squad in the National Hockey League, but it really depends on what Donnie's thinking and the management there, Cam Neely and Charlie Jacobs are thinking, if they want to do something short-term and get younger and bring in more of a teaching-type coach or thinking long-term, or thinking short-term, getting someone that'll try to turn this group around quickly to try to win a championship in the next year or so.
Anson, have you ever seen a guy as fast as Connor McDavid?
Pavel Bure was pretty fast, and so was Fedorov, and so was Modano. But the difference in this era is you could showcase that speed now because you can't clutch and grab. Those players I mentioned before, they'd get slowed down, they get bogged down the neutral zone because you put a stick on someone and you could just basically jet ski from one blue line to the other. I remember Pat Burns, our coach there in Boston, he'd always say, put your stick in somebody's side. And that's all you have to do. Take 2 quick strides, get your stick in someone's waist, and then he'll pull you right down the ice. And I think that's what required you to have what I called it man strength. So you couldn't play in the National Hockey League as an 18-year-old. It was very rare because you weren't strong enough. If a guy had their stick on you, he had you. So, yes, I think those players were just as fast, but I think Connor McDavid's really benefited from the rule change. And when the puck's on his stick, that's the biggest difference for me, even with Nathan McKinnon too. Normally when you see a guy with a puck on his stick, it's like an anchor and they slow down. These players are just as fast, if not faster, with the puck on their stick, and they are without the puck on their stick.
All right, I'll get your prediction on the game, but what is it like to play for Team Canada? I mean, they just had their loss. I can only imagine what sports radio would be like in Canada right now, but what's it like to play for them, and do they have a lot of amount of pressure going into this game?
Oh, there's tons of pressure. I've had the pleasure of wearing that Maple Leaf 3 times. I won a World Junior Championship in '94, a Men's World Championship in '97, then again in 2003. And every single time you put that sweater on, you're expected to win. It doesn't matter if you're shorthanded. Doesn't matter if you're icing an all-star lineup. There's no excuses. The people in Canada are expecting a victory, and if you don't win, they expect heads to roll. That's how serious and the pressure is up in Canada. So as an athlete, you love it because you don't go into a game thinking you want to tie or hope you don't lose. You go in thinking we want to win. So if those expectations from the public are that, inside the room, they're tenfold because guys are trying to pull for each other because they understand what's at stake.
Yeah, who wins this thing?
Well, this is a hard one for me. I think the best thing that happened to this game or this tournament is the Americans beating Canada on Canadian soil. And Canadian teams typically need some adversity to overcome to win a championship. And they've got a lot of guys that X factor with Sidney Crosby, Mark Stone, McDavid, McKinnon. But the Americans also have that too, with the Kachuk brothers, Gensel and Jack Eichel. I think it'll come down to goaltending. We haven't seen Binnington's best game, and I think the high-end talent with Canada is too high, even though they're missing some defensemen. So I think Canada wins it the second game.
I'm hoping no one boos the anthems. I know that's been a big storyline here. My guy Todd Angeli will be doing the national anthem and the Canadian anthem, so I'm hoping that we get Boston fans to cheer that thing. Just speaking of the Boston fans, you mentioned Pat Burns. We played a clip of one of your old goals there in the playoffs. It was assisted by Joe Thornton and Ray Bourque. Can you just imagine playing for guys like that, man? It's two of the best players ever here in Boston.
It's crazy. Like, Joe was just there. We just traded for Joe. We just drafted Joe. I got there late in '97, I believe it was, the trade deadline. We drafted Joe and Sammy, and Bubba was the end of his career. And to play with both of those guys, one starting a Hall of Fame career, the other one ending a Hall of Fame career, it was fascinating times there in Boston. But the one thing I'll never forget is the passionate fan base they have there in Boston. It was amazing. I mean, when I got there, the team was in last place at the last quarter of the season, whatever it might be, and there's tons of yellow seats. And I remember joking with my mom and dad back in Toronto saying, everyone's wearing their yellow rain jackets here because at the time the Fleet Center had yellow seats. Yep. But we turned that thing around pretty quickly. And just the passion of the Boston fans walking down Newbury Street, Marlborough Street, in the North End. Everyone wanted to talk hockey on Causeway Street. I'll never forget that. and it's come through time and time again, Stanley Cup finals, playoff runs. You can't beat the sports fans and how emotionally involved people there in Boston are when it comes to hockey or all the major sports for that matter.
Anson Carter, fan favorite here. Appreciate you taking a few minutes here on 98.5 The Sports Hub. You can check him out, NHL on TNT. Great coverage, Anson, and appreciate you taking a few minutes tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Want everyone to tune in. We're on at 7 o'clock tonight.
7 o'clock tonight. Appreciate you, Anson Carter. Thank you, sir.
You got it. You're welcome.
You got it. Anson Carter, everybody, former Boston Bruin, part of the coverage on TNT. They begin at 7 o'clock tonight. If you like that clip, check out more videos from my show, The Joe Murray Show, here. For more Bruins analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.